And we're live. Hi, everyone. I'm back with Jackson. Hi, Jackson.
Hey everyone.
Um, Today, we're going to talk about the predictions because the lists for both Operation Grizzly and Operation Warbirds just released. Are they available to the public now?
They're not quite available yet. I can make a public document to get them all together, but I wanted to get this video out
Yep.
for us, and that'll be like the full reveal of
Yep.
everything.
Yep. So, but as soon as this video releases, they should be available at least to the players. So that's what we are intending, anyways. Um, Jackson has made a PowerPoint for us, but unfortunately we are in very last minute because he like sent it to me earlier today for me and yesterday for you. So so right now I haven't actually written my predictions into the PowerPoint, but I will definitely say them because I had a chance to go over all the lists as I usually do. I make these like in hand spreadsheets, writing everything down, noting down what the different builds are and everything. Um, so we can at least have a talk about what the lists are and what we're seeing. So are all the lists in right now for you, Jackson?
Correct. Yeah. We have what do we got? Let's see, 26 for Grizzly and 17 for Warbirds. And all the lists are in as of the deadline, so that was good.
Yeah. So and everything is approved by now. Did you have to have people resend lists to you?
There were a couple of people, like people sent me lists, and I was like, they were saying, well, this is kind of my first stab into competitive. What do you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah.
And so I gave them some feedback to maybe do some slight adjustments to try and
Mm.
get some to get some to
Slightly
maximize their
better. Yeah.
potential or
Yeah.
get slightly better, so they would have a good time. But by and large, everybody's first attempt was accepted.
Mm.
Um, and I don't think I had to send anybody's back saying this is too bad, this is too
Yeah.
powerful or too
Yeah.
competitive. So that was
Yeah.
very good.
Yeah, because I think for me the level of competitiveness, it really depends on what people are trying to do, and there are some people where you can clearly see that they're trying to compete. There are also some where you can clearly see that they're definitely not trying to. Um, but I think you have a fairly even playing field here. Again, a testament, I guess, to the pack, which we've talked about before, and we both really like. So let's talk Grizzly first. 24 list, was that it that we have?
26.
26 lists. So that's a good sized tournament by now. And let's talk. If you talk your predictions first, I can maybe talk about mine afterwards.
Sure, yeah. So the best allies, it seemed like it was a very, so it was about even between Axis and allies for Grizzly, which was good. I think we had what, 14 allies, 12 Axis.
Yeah.
Um, But what stood out to me was Joe's CeeLo Heights Soviets.
Mm,
You look at this list, he has double, one heavy mortar, one medium mortar, so double mortar, double Zis gun, a
mm,
T-34, and a quad Maxim machine gun with a bunch of guards and the free rifle squad to support. And I think that HE spam, he was one of the few people to maximize the dice count
mm.
in the list. So I think everything in his army does something. His guard squads have Panzerfaust, so they can be at least a threat to enemy vehicles.
Yeah.
And while the T-34, you could have gone more efficient and take the Stuart, but I think that leans into the theme of like, if I'm taking Soviets, I want to run a Soviet tank, and
Mm,
I absolutely love seeing that on the table. So um, yeah, I think he has a very good spread of mobility, durability, and absolute hard hitting power with his
mm.
HE spam. So that was my thought on his list.
Yeah.
And then,
Joe's list was one of the few ones that I actually couldn't open. For some reason, my computer didn't want me to open JPEGs. So I had no idea what was in this. But as soon as I saw that he was bringing CeeLo Heights, I knew that this was someone who knew that what they were doing. Because if you're running theater platoon, CeeLo Heights is one of the go-to, been for quite a while, one of the go-to competitive theater selectors, right? And
Hmm.
double mortar, double cyst, that's a lot of HE you've got in that. And if you have the standoff with, as you said, the guard squads with Panzerfaust, that is a really strong um, combination. And I also like the combination of a T-34 and a quad maxim, because the quad maxim will absolutely delete infantry, but the T-34 is hard enough to take on enemy armor. So that's a good combination, I think. Um, I also, you mentioned Ben Allen here. I also have Ben in my top predictions. So maybe let's talk a little bit about Ben. He's bringing a mixed bag, skirmish heavy Americans with engineers and Dodgers, veteran skirmishers. I like that. That makes him very, very survivable, and a lot of HE in that list. 13 order dice. I really like this Normandy list here from Ben. How did you feel about it when you saw it?
Yeah, I saw. This is how I like to run my Marines as well, with the
Yeah.
3 squads of vets with BARs and everything. They're
Mm,
just so durable, and
yeah.
even if an opponent would assault them and get the drop on them as veterans, they're very hard to deal with. Or you got to
Yeah.
really kind of prey on prey on the luck of the dice to charge them.
Mm,
I'm sure you've had countless times where people are like, "Oh, I can just throw down with your Gurkhas
yeah.
and try and drown them in dice, and then
Yeah.
roll up and only get 1 or 2, and then you just beat them."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I like this skirmish ability here. The double engineers and dodges is kind of a classic.
It is
Ben
classic
tends to
American. Yeah.
run, yeah, Ben tends to run both of those in dodges, either with a light howitzer, or he
Mm,
usually runs his Chaffee. And so I was happy to see that he switched it up to a veteran 105, because that gyro stabilized medium howitzer is going to be a really big push
yeah.
unit, I
It
think.
is. It is. Although it is expensive, I'll say that. But getting that gyro stabilizer onto the medium howitzer and then just pushing up, because it's such a threat both against infantry and also against armor. I really like this list. For me, I think not. I don't think that the veteran 105 is maybe the most competitive choice you could take, and that makes it like a 4 for me. But it's still a really good list. Um, it could be optimized a little bit, I think.
Yeah, I
But
was a little surprised to see an inexperienced light artillery piece in here, as
yeah,
well as an inexperienced medium mortar. I know that's kind of because artillery pieces can't get sniped out, but I've seen that in a couple of your list analysis videos. What do
yeah,
you think about having an inexperienced light artillery? Do you just use it as an indirect platform, or I
yes,
thought just because
yes,
of the -1 it would be
yeah.
problematic?
No, it's not. And that's, well, if you're buying it regular, then you really need to have that spotter as well. For me, at least, or you're aiming to lock down an area of terrain, like just take that line across the table. But most of the time, you don't actually need to have that extra +1 to hit. You can get away with just running it in experience, because if you're locking down a line, sitting there in ambush, the enemy will still maybe think about pushing into that line if you're on ambush. Yes, you'll be like at -1, but if the enemy's still thinking about maybe not doing it, then you're already getting the effect that you want. Most of the
Right.
time,
Okay.
my howitzers will anyway sit in area terrain where I get some cover, and I'll be shooting out indirectly anyway. So that respect, it makes it way cheaper, and I still think it delivers the things that you want it to do. Um, but it is also very, very vulnerable. I'll accept that.
But yeah, I guess going back with if he has 3 squads of veterans and a veteran Sherman, he had to
Yes,
skimp
yes.
points somewhere.
Yeah, he
So
did. Yeah. Um, I'll also throw in Christian's Guam, which is not on your list, but it is on my top 5 list. Where he again, it's an American list. He's bringing the Guam Theater Platoon, and it's a mixed bag of skirmishes and a little bit of flamethrowers as well. 14 order dice is also a very good order dice count. So I'll throw that in with the top allies. But other than that, I completely agree with your analysis here on what we're expecting to see at the come out on top here. So yeah, let's talk Axis as well.
Yes.
Because this surprised me a little bit, but a lot of the best lists, in my view, are actually Axis lists here. Um, so let's talk your predictions first here.
Sure. Yeah. So I had a bit of a talk with both Pat and Sean McDonald,
Mhm.
who's also running 1942 DAC Light Infantry. They're both running the same selector and both kind of have similar uh, goals with what they want to accomplish.
Mm,
But what stood out to me was Pat has okay 4 Schutzen squads with the free LMG,
mm,
so sit back, very good backline holders. Um, Although I remember we talked about this last time, he has his Pioneer squad,
mm.
6 SMGs, no flamethrower. I
Yeah,
was really surprised at that.
yeah.
Um, but you keep going down and you kind of see what he was doing. So he has a bit of a mechanized platoon. So he has a field
Mm,
car for the engineers, so an SMG blob, a SDK of Z7 towing the 88, which I always love playing as a DAC player myself. That was one of the
yeah.
first models that I had assembled. And anytime I can see an 88 on the table, I am a
Oh
happy
yeah,
camper.
yeah.
Um, and the 222 light armored car, very affordable, very solid. And the Lorraine Schlepper with the forward facing heavy howitzer. So if these big H, while he doesn't nearly have the volume of HE like we saw in Joe's list, if
No,
any of these hit, it's a
instant death.
deletion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It is. And it is for me a very good army. I think the one weakness there is, because I was also comparing Sean and Pat, and I'm going to go with Sean in the top five here. The one weakness that Pat has is that he is at 12 order dice, whereas Sean is at 14. Both of them have shoots and spam. Sean also has like a lot more mixed bag elements for me than Pat. So I
Mhm.
think not going that heavy into artillery, I think, is a little bit of a benefit for Sean here, and I think the extra order dice will come in handy for him. Both of
Yeah,
them,
going
though,
f
yeah, both of
I was
them
just gonna say
feel,
going into oh, sorry.
yeah,
You can go.
okay, both of them feel very camping Germans to me, like very backline holding, reaching out at long range and hurting the enemy there, especially with all the shoots and LMGs in it. So yeah,
Mhm.
um, you go.
Yeah, I was gonna quick going over Sean's list. He really leaned into the veterans, which I thought was
Yeah,
cool. All he also missed out on taking a flamethrower,
he
which I
did.
found funny. Um, but yeah, he doubled up on artillery, taking a medium AT gun and a light howitzer,
Mm,
and a Panzer II Lux. So while uh, Pat was leaning into the very heavy AT with the super
yep,
heavy AT gun and a heavy howitzer. I think Sean was saying, okay, death by 1,000 cuts.
yep, yep,
I'm probably going to encounter a Stuart-ish
yep.
tank. And so let's try and gear my picks towards something like
Mm,
that.
mm,
So yeah, it was interesting seeing the differences between them too.
yep, I agree. And then you had Robin, who is also on my top five, which I think he's actually in my like top three as well. Because Robin he's brought the Iwo Jima theater selector, right? 14 order dice, and it's a horde that has flamethrowers in it as well and has a lot of HE. I really like that army. It's very very hard. And it has a lot of different tools. What do you think about it?
Yeah, Robin's list for me was wildly interesting. I just hosted a tournament over New Year's that was more new player oriented, and one player brought horde Japanese, not quite bamboo spear fighters, but a lot of these big regular veteran
Mm,
blobs. And I thought with them being regular, yeah, they'd get mowed down or things like they would be very easy to counter if you're just gonna kamikaze them straight into the enemy. But they ended up being extremely durable. If they find a piece of light cover or hard
yeah,
cover,
yeah,
they can kind of weasel their way through the board to get where you want them to go.
mm,
Um, and of course, like double medium mortar, both with spotters, and the spigot mortar with a spotter, if any of these hit, it's
oh
a
yeah,
real issue, and
it
the
is.
two flamers can capitalize on that D6 plus 2 pins that the spigot mortar delivers.
Mm,
Um, I think ultimately it's going to be very good. And he has two suicide AT teams to see if he does encounter anything that he can't quite deal with, or maybe his opponent gets lucky and takes out his engineer bomb early.
Yeah.
They still have to contend with all of this other stuff. So I
Mm,
am very excited to see how Robin plays this.
mm. Me too. If he plays it well, he can do really well. This is a very, very strong list, and one of the lists that I'm hoping that will bring back Japanese in the top bracket, because they've been absent for quite a while, even though they should be there. But this, I think, is one of the ways that you can run Japanese successfully if you know how to use terrain and not just rush at the enemy. Um, and then the final one is one that I actually have. I haven't got Isaac on my top five. So could you just run us through why do you think he's going to end up there?
Yeah, so this was a very interesting one. It's the Panzer Reconnaissance Reinforced Platoon out of Fortress Budapest.
Mm,
And my friend Joseph, he plays Fortress Budapest all the time, so we're very familiar with the selectors that are offered in there. And the interesting thing is, it's effectively a tank platoon. So he
it
has
is. Yeah.
two Panzer II Lukes, which I think is great. But he has, what is this? Two half tracks and two trucks, and he can pay to give the two half tracks recce,
Yeah.
which I think is very interesting. So he has what, six grenadier squads,
Mm,
each with Panzerfaust and a mix of assault rifles or rifles, and they all have motorized infantry, as well
yeah.
as your second lieutenant also has the motorized infantry. So using the theater selector bonuses, I think he can be really mobile. Um, and I understand that, like, with skirmishing, yeah, you can pin the transport and pin the guys inside, but
Mm,
that's where the motorized infantry comes in to counter it and
yeah.
giving recce on your half tracks. So I think he's going to be able to be very reactionary. And while he doesn't have a ton of AT, he really only has two Luxes and the mixed Panzerfausts. I think he's going to struggle dealing if somebody comes at him with another armored platoon or something like that. I
Yeah.
think he could really capitalize on if he has I think he has a favorable matchup against other backline holder ones where
Mm,
he can really keep the middle of the board for himself and use Reki to maybe get on objectives late game or contest stuff with his full transports because he has the bodies to do it. And so that's
yes.
why I included this
Yes.
here,
Yeah.
because it was just a very unique selector. And I think the motorized infantry eliminates a lot of the problems that you would see with armored carrier uh,
Yes.
spam.
As does the Reki. I still don't feel like Hanomaks are worth it, even though they do get Reki here. For me, they're overcosted for what they do, and I think that is why I rated Isaac's platoon lower. But we shall see. Um, we shall see what happens there. Interesting. So we're very much in agreement on a lot of these. I had Sean instead of Isaac, but that was basically it. So yeah, let's see if we're right then. That's always
Yeah.
the interesting bit, isn't it?
hmm
So what about Warbirds?
Yeah.
Warbirds
So,
is
so
is a weird one, isn't it? Because it's lower points, and what happens then? It's really interesting. Yeah,
Yeah, Warbirds being lower points and no free units, and we had a lot of comp for this one. So you can't take the heavy howitzer, you can't take you can only take one infantry flamer, so you can't
yeah,
take a vehicle flamer or some of the other tools that you would normally see in a standard event. Like I know I every single tournament I go to with Soviets, I see a BA-20 with a flamethrower,
yeah.
and I had noticed a distinct lack of a lot of this stuff. So I think this favors Warbirds probably favors, like I have in my rankings, the veteran skirmisher lists. I think they're going to be so much more durable
Mm,
because they don't have to contend with nearly as many flamers or howitzers or the standard tools to beat them.
I agree.
Uh, so that's kind of where I was going with this prediction.
Mm,
Um, so we'll start off with Franklin, his armored Soviets. He came to my first tournament that I hosted way back one year ago today, almost. Yeah, January 16th, 2022. I hosted my first tournament, and Franklin had a very similar thing. All guards with submachine guns, loaded up with trucks,
mm,
and a different mix of things. And I think that he's leaning into that here with the M3 White Scout cars,
mm,
with the Pencil HMG. And while I do agree that, yeah, you could have taken trucks with MMGs for cheaper, and they still largely do the same thing, and maybe you
yeah.
free up some points. I think the HMGs are a surprising addition because between the HMGs, the Panzerfaust, and the Zisgun, you can take on any tank really that people would decide to bring.
Yeah.
And so I think he's very mobile. He has the submachine gun spam, so he can, if he gets a good charge, he can just throw out a ton of dice. And so I think he's a very good player. So I think he has a good chance to
I also
make the most of what he brought.
I also think that he might end up in the top 3 just because he has 10 order dice, which is fairly high, and there's nothing in his army that's like wasted. The order dice, most of them have a clear purpose where they can actually hurt the enemy still. So I really like that combination of you having a high order dice count and still being effective with all your shots. Then you have Joe as the second place.
Yeah, so Joe and David are fairly similar in their list design. But so they start off with 2 big veteran blobs with a mix of BARs, submachine guns, and stubborn. So stubborn vets, like we were talking about at your list that you would bring to this one, really leveraging that possibility of if somebody does bring a flamethrower in a Jeep, you're not really going to be worried about the morale check, which is helpful. But yeah, so I was very surprised to see that he took a veteran medium machine gun team because he could have easily taken a regular one or maybe added some more paratroopers to his squad. So that was a little bit of an odd pick because he has a low dice count at 7. But he has a bit of a pseudo tank list here with the M3 White Scout car loaded up with machine guns and the 105 howitzer armored carrier. And so I think that these 2 vehicles can put out a ton of shots,
Yeah.
and really, I think he's going to be fine with
Yeah.
both of them.
Yeah. Again, Joe was one of the people where I couldn't actually see the list, so I haven't really anything to add to this. How many order dice is he at?
He has 7 order dice at 747.
Yeah.
So it's a
For
lot
me,
lower than
that
what we
is
saw for
a
Franklin.
little
But
lower. Yeah. I would maybe throw in other American players like Christian or Ben C. Both of them have 10 order dice skirmish heavy lists with BARs and good infantry in them as well, which also could do well. But I think both of them haven't really picked up the challenge that you gave, because that was one of the things was that veteran players should bring a heavy tank. Um, so I'm guessing that both of them are newer players, which may mean that they won't do as well. But just based off list, I would throw those 2 into the top 3 here. And then we have one that we both agree on, which is David.
yeah, so David's list, let me just pull it up again. I had it. There we go. David's Warbirds, yeah, 10 order dice, 749. The similar deal, veteran blobs. What is this? 8-man,
Yeah.
1 8-man, 1 9-man. But he actually changed up his list slightly from what we had. But he has 2 inexperienced medium machine gun teams, which I think is the way to run that here. Because like we were talking about with that light howitzer discrepancy, it's like you don't really care about the -1. If you get 1 hit and 1 pin, that's that accomplishment. And even
that
and
is
if
all
you
you
get a
need.
miracle and kill 3 guys throughout the game, you made your points back plus the
Yeah.
pins.
Yeah.
So yeah, he also has a M3 Stuart with all the MMGs. So he has a DACA Stuart, has the mortar, has a bazooka, and the veteran teams to cap on the objectives.
Yeah.
So I think understanding when we talked about the missions last game, because players did not have access to the missions before the lists.
Yeah.
I think the veteran blobs are going to be very thankful that they are veteran or stubborn or both in a lot of the missions that I designed. So
Survivability is never a bad thing. Never a bad thing. So again, we are pretty much in agreement here, with the exception of me maybe throwing one of the American skirmishers, Ben or Dave, into the mix here. No, Ben or Christian into the mix. How do you think that your veteran players with the heavy tanks are going to fare? Because looking down through the list here, I see a lot of what I term Death Star lists with extremely heavy tanks. I think there was even a Pershing in one of the lists.
Yes. Yeah, we saw a
And
Pershing.
a Yacht Panther as well.
Yes, there's a Pershing, there's a Jagdpanther, there's a T-35.
Yeah,
A good amount of veteran players did accept my challenge, and I was very happy to see that.
yeah.
So what I thought was interesting is even the players that went with the heavy tanks, at least a good number of them, still had 7, 8, 9 order dice in their lists.
Yes, yes.
So I
I
think
think the
that
lowest was 6. Two of the list have 6 order dice or something like that. Yeah. So
yeah, so I think the veteran players who took the challenge very much made up for their I guess you could say handicap of taking a heavy
yeah,
tank
yeah,
with everything else that's in their list. They took the inexperienced MMGs. They maybe took the inexperienced mortar, or they made sure that the rest of their army could effectively support their heavy tank, so
yeah,
that way it wasn't a crutch, even if by a miracle if it got killed by a medium AT gun or an
yeah.
errant bazooka shot, they wouldn't be completely out of the game. They can leverage their
Mm,
their experience to try and come back from that.
yeah.
And so I was very excited to see that.
Although going up against another heavy tank, one of those tanks is going to get blown up, and the player is going to sit there. Nah.
That is true. Or in the last tournament that I had, you'll actually see this in the out of gas picture on the PowerPoint.
Mm,
Joe
yeah, it's going to run out.
Velice, yeah, he took a fuel shortage King Tiger. This is the King Tiger list that we talked
Oh,
about that took
yeah,
best access.
yeah,
Um, he went up against another King Tiger first round, and they both just had a slapbox fight. They couldn't actually finish the job and kill each other. So that is also something. They could both do nothing, and
yeah.
then it relies on the rest of the
True,
lists,
true, true.
to the rest of the army to kind of carry that weight.
Right. So that will be interesting in itself. Jackson, here at the end of our predictions, what do you want to say?
Yeah, so I wanted to let folks know the numbers as of the list deadline. So yeah, 26 pre-registered with a couple of more stragglers. So we should have I think we can get to 30 by the time we roll around, which would be
Mm,
really really good. We have 42 unique players between Grizzly and Warbirds, which I think is super awesome. So a lot of uh, not just there are some duplicates between the Warbirds lists and the Grizzly list, but people want to stay and play both events, which I think is
yeah.
really means a lot to me and Jeff as co-TOs. Yeah, representation from 7 states across the U.S. So this is almost a Midwest regionals, which I
It
think is
is
really
approaching
cool.
that, yes.
Yeah,
You might
so
rename it next time and just call it the Midwest Regionals.
yeah, so I mean, we have players coming all the way like from New York State to Wisconsin and Illinois. So we have pretty much the
Yes.
entire
Yeah.
Midwest covered. Some folks coming in from Kentucky and Indiana, and a lot of folks from Ohio and Michigan, of course, where we're based out of. So I'm super excited to see that people are willing to travel and willing to make the treacherous commute on a cold January weekend
Yeah.
up to Michigan. But I'm super thankful to see everything. I did want to give a massive thank you to a lot of the sponsors. This was the prize pool from Cricket, and I'm thankful to say that we'll have a similar, if not greater, prize pool to pull from uh, come Grizzly and Warbirds. So I'm very excited about. And this actually, this bottom picture is you'll see a few familiar faces because I
Yeah.
understand that when you can't go to a lot of the tournaments, you don't exactly you know the names of the players, but you don't necessarily know what they look like.
True.
So yeah, these are this is everybody from my local club and a lot of people that traveled. This was from my doubles tournament back in
Mm,
May, and a lot of them are coming out for Grizzly. So it'll be really good to see all of them again. Um, and I did want to. I saw your talk with Dave
yes.
Nolan, right? And I wanted to
Yes.
talk a little bit about that, about the
Yeah.
possibility of the WTC World League.
Yes. There is going to be, although it's possibly not going to be called the WTC World League, but it is going to be a Warlord Games sponsored league. Warlord Games have been in talk with the IGE, which is the company that runs the WTC, and I've gotten involved in a minor capacity. I think I'm going to be the guy actually typing stuff in. So and yes, we'll definitely make sure that the first US tournament in that league will be Grizzly and Warbirds. So everyone going will actually get a name in the history books for that.
Yeah, I was listening to that episode and I thought it would be really, it sounded fascinating to
Yeah,
be able to kind of compare
yeah,
how we rank up across the pond, so to
yeah,
speak. So all the Europeans, and especially all the I know from your videos there are folks in South Africa and Australia and Chile, like all over the world that
yeah,
play. But we may not necessarily get to play each other because we can't all make the trip out to Grenada.
yeah.
Spain for the actual tournament proper. So I think this is going to be a very
This
good
is
way
going
to
to be
see.
a way of bringing together the world of bold action and not just the local metas where people actually get to travel to play games. Yeah.
Yeah, because even in the U.S., I know with John Ross in Warzone Atlanta, that's like kind of the more competitive
Mm.
scene, I would say, from bold action. So even up here in Michigan, I would love to go down to that
Mm.
tournament, but uh,
It's a long trip.
The U.S. is a big place,
Yeah.
so
It's a
um,
long trip.
trying to find a way to even travel to outside of Adepticon or maybe
Yeah.
LVO or some of these larger tournaments. I think this league is going to be a great way to even see how within a country we all stack up and compare to each other.
Yeah. It hopefully is. So we'll see what how it turns out, but I will definitely ensure that Grizzly and Warbirds will be the first two tournaments noted down, and I will make sure that you get a small spreadsheet that you have to fill out as a TO
That
as soon as
that would
it's
be
done.
great. And I would like my 25 points for hosting this thing.
You will definitely get the 25 points for hosting.
Oh, all right.
Right.
Sounds good.
That was it for us today. Next thing that you'll hear from us will be when Grizzly and Warbirds is over, and we can tell you some of the results. So, Jackson, thank you again so much for tuning in, and Happy New Year's.
Yeah, thank you for having me on the channel and Happy New Year, Bo.
Right. And I will turn off the video. See you next time. Cheers.